I watched my sister-in-law Vanessa hold up my cardigan at Thanksgiving dinner like it was evidence in a court trial, her perfectly glossed lips stretched into a grin as she announced to the entire table, "Oh my God, Becca, is this the same sweater you wore to Christmas 3 years ago? I swear I saw a woman at the homeless shelter wearing the exact same one last week." She paused for effect, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dramatically. "Wait, maybe she donated it and you bought it back." The table erupted in awkward laughter, Brian's booming chuckle the loudest of all, while I sat frozen with my fork halfway to my mouth, feeling every eye in the room cataloging my clearance rack blouse and my daughter's hand-me-down dress that I'd carefully altered to fit me. Little did she know that within 6 months, she'd be standing in my kitchen, tears streaming down her face, begging me for the very thing she'd mocked me for having, humility and compassion. My name is Rebecca, and for 15 years I've been married to Marcus, a good man with a steady job as a high school teacher and a heart bigger than his paycheck. We never had much, but what we had was honest, built on love and sacrifice, and the kind of partnership that doesn't look glamorous in photos but feels warm when you're living inside it. Marcus's brother, Brian, married Vanessa 7 years ago, and from the moment she walked into our family with her designer handbag and her real estate agent's confidence, I knew our worlds would never quite align. But I tried, God knows I tried, because family mattered to Marcus and what mattered to Marcus mattered to me. The holiday gatherings became my personal theater of humiliation. Vanessa would arrive in clothes that cost more than our monthly grocery budget, her highlights fresh from the salon, her nails painted in whatever color was trending that season. She'd kiss the air beside my cheek, never quite touching, and immediately launch into stories about their latest vacation to Cancun or the new Tesla Brian had surprised her with for her birthday. I'd smile and nod, feeling my daughter Emma's 10-year-old intuition already sensing the tension her father tried so hard to smooth over with jokes and subject changes. That Thanksgiving, after the cardigan incident, I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. My hands gripped the cold porcelain sink as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. This woman in her late 30s with tired eyes and laugh lines that had been earned through actual joy, not Botox appointments. I could hear Vanessa's voice carrying from the dining room, something about a shopping spree at Nordstrom, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not shame, I realized with sudden clarity, but anger. Clean, righteous anger at being treated like I was less than human because I chose to live within my means, because I prioritized my daughter's college fund over my wardrobe, because I found dignity in thrift stores and coupon clipping instead of debt, and keeping up appearances. When I returned to the table, Marcus squeezed my hand under the tablecloth. He'd heard everything, of course. His jaw was tight, his smile forced. But he wouldn't confront his brother, not on a holiday, not in front of his aging parents who kept the peace at all costs. So I squeezed back and finished my meal, plotting my escape the moment dessert was served. I remember looking around that dining room at Marcus's parents sitting at the head of the table trying to pretend everything was fine, at Brian refilling his wine glass for the 4th time, at Vanessa scrolling through her phone probably checking her Instagram likes, and thinking that this was what dysfunction looked like when it wore nice clothes and smiled for family photos. The drive home was silent except for Emma's soft voice from the back seat asking if Aunt Vanessa was mad at me. My heart broke hearing my daughter's concern, her childhood innocence trying to make sense of adult cruelty. Marcus reached over and took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, our wordless language for, "I'm sorry," and "I love you," and "we'll get through this together." But I could feel the weight of unsaid things hanging between us, all the conversations we'd had late at night about his family, about Vanessa's behavior, about whether we should keep subjecting ourselves to these gatherings. "Mom, why doesn't Aunt Vanessa like your clothes?" Emma asked, and I felt Marcus's hand tighten around mine. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully because children remember these moments, these explanations that shape how they see the world. "Sometimes people measure worth by the wrong things, sweetheart. Aunt Vanessa thinks expensive clothes make someone valuable, but you and I know that's not true. What makes someone valuable is how they treat others, how kind they are, how they show up for the people they love." "I like your clothes, Mom. They're cozy." I smiled in the rearview mirror, meeting her eyes. "Thank you, baby. That means more to me than you know." But that night, after Emma was asleep and Marcus was grading papers at the kitchen table, I stood in our bedroom closet looking at my wardrobe with fresh eyes. Every piece had a story. The jeans I bought at Goodwill for $8 that fit better than any designer pair I could have purchased. The blouse I'd found at a consignment shop, still with the original tags, 75% off retail. The cardigan Vanessa had mocked, which had belonged to my grandmother and still smelled faintly of her perfume when I buried my face in it. These weren't just clothes, they were memories, practical choices, small victories in the ongoing battle to build a secure future for our family. I thought about Vanessa's closet, which I'd seen once when we helped them move into their house 5 years ago. Rows and rows of clothes, many with tags still attached, shoes stacked in clear boxes like a boutique display, handbags arranged by color and season. It had looked impressive, aspirational even, but I remembered thinking even then that it seemed more like a museum than a closet, more about display than use. And I remembered the look on Brian's face when Vanessa had shown it off, a mixture of pride and something else I couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe? Or resignation. The incidents only escalated after that Thanksgiving. It was like Vanessa had found a weak spot and couldn't resist pressing on it, watching me squirm, establishing her dominance in the family hierarchy. At Emma's school play 2 weeks later, Vanessa arrived late, her heels clicking on the auditorium floor as she made her grand entrance, sliding into the seat beside me with a theatrical sigh that drew annoyed looks from other parents trying to watch their children perform. "Sorry I'm late, Becca. I was at the mall and literally lost track of time. You know how it is when you're trying to decide between the Gucci and the Prada." She paused, glancing pointedly at my practical flats and faded jeans. "Oh wait, you probably don't. When was the last time you went shopping somewhere that wasn't, tragically discount?" She laughed. That sounded like breaking glass, and I felt every parent in our row turn to stare. I kept my eyes on the stage where Emma was waiting for her entrance, refusing to let Vanessa steal this moment from me. But my face burned and my hands clenched in my lap, and I felt Marcus stiffen beside me. He started to say something, probably to defend me, but I squeezed his knee in warning. This wasn't the place, and Emma deserved to have our full attention on her performance, not on family drama. But I leaned close to Vanessa and whispered back, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through me. "Actually, Vanessa, I was reading to homeless children at the shelter this morning. The one you mentioned. They loved the books I brought. When was the last time you volunteered anywhere that didn't involve a champagne fundraiser and a photo opportunity for your social media?" Her face went stiff, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She had no response because we both knew the answer was never. Vanessa's charity work consisted of attending galas where she could wear expensive gowns and network with potential clients. The actual helping of people, the unglamorous work of showing up and serving, was beneath her. The rest of the play passed in tense silence between us, though I hardly saw any of it. My mind was racing, replaying every interaction with Vanessa over the past 7 years, every subtle dig, every backhanded compliment, every moment when she'd made me feel small. And I wondered why I tolerated it for so long, why I'd smiled and swallowed my pride and pretended it didn't hurt. For Marcus, yes, because family peace mattered to him. For Emma, because I didn't want her exposed to conflict. But also, I realized with uncomfortable clarity because some small part of me had wondered if Vanessa was right, if maybe I was failing at life by not having more, by not wanting more, by being content with less. But watching Emma on that stage, seeing her confidence and joy as she delivered her lines, I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't failed at anything. This child, raised in a modest home with second-hand clothes and homemade meals, was thriving. She was kind and creative and grounded in a way that children raised with everything often weren't. She understood the value of things because she'd watched us work for them, save for them, choose carefully what we brought into our home. She wasn't entitled or spoiled or measuring her worth by her possessions. She was exactly who I'd hoped she'd be, and that was worth more than all of Vanessa's designer handbags combined. After the play, Emma ran to us with flushed cheeks and sparkling eyes, and I scooped her into my arms, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her heartbeat against mine. "You were amazing, baby. Absolutely perfect." "Did you see me, Aunt Vanessa?" Emma asked, turning to her with innocent enthusiasm. Vanessa had been checking her phone, but she looked up and pasted on a smile. "Of course, sweetie. You did great." The words were right, but the delivery was flat, distracted, already mentally somewhere else. Emma's face fell slightly, and I felt a fresh wave of anger rise in my chest. My daughter had done nothing to deserve this woman's indifference, her casual dismissal. If you're enjoying this story and you've ever felt judged for living within your means, hit the like button. You're not alone in this, and your choices matter more than you know. Marcus saw it too, the hurt flickering across Emma's features. Hey Em, let's go get ice cream to celebrate. Just the three of us. He emphasized those last 4 words, and Vanessa had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. But as we walked to the car, I heard her call out behind us, Becca, that jacket is so unique. Is it vintage or just old? And there it was again, that casual cruelty dressed up as a compliment, designed to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. I didn't turn around, didn't dignify it with a response, just kept walking with my family, my real treasure, the people who actually mattered. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus and I had the conversation we'd been avoiding for months. We sat on our back porch with cheap beer from the grocery store, watching the stars come out, and finally acknowledged what we both knew but hadn't wanted to say. She's getting worse, Marcus said quietly. I don't know if it's always been this bad and I just didn't notice, or if something's changed, but the way she treats you, Becca, it's not okay. It's never been okay, but it's getting unbearable. I took a long sip of my beer, gathering my thoughts. I think she's always been like this, just more subtle about it before. But lately it's like she needs to prove something to herself or to us or to everyone. Like she's trying to justify her life choices by tearing down mine. Do you want to stop going to family things? He asked, and I could hear the conflict in his voice. Marcus loved his family despite their flaws, wanted to maintain those connections, but he also loved me and hated seeing me hurt. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to cut her off completely, to never subject myself to that again. But another part doesn't want to give her that power, doesn't want to let her drive me away from your family. Your parents are good people, Marcus. And Brian, when he's not under her spell, he's a decent guy. I don't want to lose them because of her. You wouldn't lose them. We could still see them separately. But it wouldn't be the same, and you know it. Family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, they'd all be fractured. And honestly, I think that's what she wants. She wants me to be the one who breaks, who refuses to come, so she can paint herself as the victim and me as the problem. Marcus was quiet for a long time, staring up at the sky. You're probably right. God, when did my brother marry such a nightmare? He didn't, I said softly. He married an ambitious woman who was probably insecure long before she met him. And instead of addressing that insecurity, she's built this elaborate facade of success and superiority. The cruelty, the constant need to put others down. It's not about you or me or anyone else. It's about her trying to convince herself that she's worthy, that she's enough. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But understanding it helps. It means I can stop taking it personally, stop letting her words burrow under my skin. Because it's not really about my clothes or my car or my choices. It's about her fear that her choices might be wrong, that the life she's built might be as hollow as it feels. Marcus looked at me with something like awe. How do you do that? How do you find empathy for someone who's been so cruel to you? Because the alternative is letting her make me bitter and angry and small. And I refuse to give her that power. My life is good, Marcus. Our life is good. I'm not going to let Vanessa's issues make me doubt that or feel bad about it. He leaned over and kissed me slow and sweet. I don't deserve you. You absolutely do, I replied, kissing him back. We deserve each other, and we deserve this life we've built. And we deserve to be proud of it. But privately, alone in the dark after Marcus had fallen asleep, I cried. Because no matter how much intellectual understanding I had, no matter how much I tried to rationalize Vanessa's behavior, it still hurt. The comments still stung. The judgment still landed. And I was tired, so tired of having to be the bigger person, of having to turn the other cheek, of having to explain to my daughter why her aunt was mean to her mommy. The holiday season approached, and with it came another gathering, this time for Marcus's father's birthday in early December. I dreaded it for weeks, actually felt sick to my stomach the morning of the party. Marcus noticed, of course, found me sitting on the edge of our bed staring at my closet like it was a test I hadn't studied for. What are you thinking? He asked, sitting beside me. I'm thinking that no matter what I wear, Vanessa will find something to criticize. Too casual, too dressy, too old, too cheap, too something. And I'm tired of caring, Marcus. I'm tired of this whole thing. So don't care, he said simply. Wear what makes you comfortable. Wear your favorite jeans and that sweater I love, the blue one that makes your eyes pop. Wear what you'd wear if you were spending the evening with people who actually appreciate you. I looked at him, this man who'd chosen me when he could have chosen someone flashier, someone with more to offer materially. Do you ever regret it? Marrying me instead of someone with money or career ambitions or designer clothes? His face went through several expressions: shock, hurt, anger, before settling on fierce determination. Rebecca Marie, listen to me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. The smartest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. You make our house a home. You raised our daughter to be an amazing human being. You love me even when I leave wet towels on the bathroom floor and forget to take out the trash. You are my partner in every sense of the word, and I wouldn't trade you for a dozen Vanessas with all their designer everything. Do you hear me? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I hear you. Good. Now put on whatever the hell you want, and let's go celebrate my dad's birthday. And if Vanessa says one single word about your appearance, I'm going to say something. I don't care if it ruins the party. I'm done watching her tear you down. I wore the blue sweater, my favorite jeans, and my grandmother's cardigan over top because the evening was cold. I wore small earrings Emma had made me in art class and my wedding ring, which had cost Marcus 2 months' worth of tips from his summer job waiting tables when we were dating. I wore confidence, or at least the appearance of it, determined not to let Vanessa see how much her previous comments had wounded me. The party started normally enough. Marcus's parents were delighted to see us, especially Emma, who was their only grandchild and the light of their lives. Brian greeted us at the door, and I noticed he looked tired, more tired than usual, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his jaw that spoke of stress. Vanessa was in the kitchen, holding court with a glass of wine, wearing a dress that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. She saw me immediately, and I watched her eyes travel from my face down to my feet and back up again, cataloging, assessing, preparing her verbal ammunition. But before she could say anything, Marcus's mother pulled me into a hug and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Rebecca, you look lovely. That color is beautiful on you. And is that your grandmother's cardigan? I always loved that piece." Vanessa's mouth closed, the comment dying on her lips. But I saw the calculation in her eyes, the slight narrowing that meant she was just waiting for another opportunity. It came about an hour later, when we were all gathered around the gift table watching Marcus's father open his presents. Vanessa had given him that expensive watch she'd been bragging about for weeks, making sure everyone knew she'd paid over $1,000 for it. Marcus and I had gone in on a framed photograph of all of us from a family reunion 10 years ago, professionally restored and matted, along with a new fishing rod he'd been eyeing at the local sporting goods store. "That's so thoughtful," Marcus's mother said, examining the photo with tears in her eyes. "Look at how young everyone was. Brian, you still had hair." She laughed and the room laughed with her. But Vanessa couldn't resist. "It's nice," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "Very practical. Not quite as impressive as a Rolex, but I suppose not everyone can afford luxury gifts. Some people have to be more creative with their budgets." The room went silent. Marcus's father set down the watch carefully, his face going red. Marcus stood up, ready to unleash whatever he'd been holding back for years. But I touched his arm gently, stopping him, because I suddenly realized something important. Vanessa wasn't winning these exchanges. She thought her cruel comments elevated her somehow, but everyone in that room was uncomfortable, embarrassed for her, not for me. Her behavior was reflecting poorly on her, not on us. "You're absolutely right, Vanessa," I said calmly, meeting her eyes. "We do have to be creative with our budget. We're saving for Emma's college fund and helping Marcus's parents with their medical bills, and living within our means, so we don't have credit card debt. It requires creativity to prioritize what matters and still show love through thoughtful gifts. But I'm okay with that. Are you okay with your choices?" It was a gentle question, but it landed like a bomb, because everyone in that room knew, even if they didn't talk about it, that Brian and Vanessa's lifestyle was financed by debt. The whispers about overdue credit card bills, about Brian's stress over their expenses, about Vanessa's declining real estate sales, they'd been circulating through the family for months. Marcus's parents had even lent them money the previous year, a loan that still hadn't been repaid. Vanessa's face went white, then red. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, I interrupted gently. I'm just saying we all make choices, and we all have to live with the consequences of those choices. I hope yours bring you happiness. Brian stood up abruptly. I need some air, he muttered, walking out to the backyard. Vanessa followed him, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor, and through the kitchen window I could see them arguing, his hands gesturing in frustration, her posture defensive and rigid. Marcus's father cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Rebecca, this photo means more to me than any watch ever could. And the fishing rod is exactly what I wanted. Thank you both for thinking of me. We love you, Dad, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. That's all that matters. The party wrapped up early after that, the confrontation having sucked the joy out of the celebration. Emma fell asleep in the car on the way home, exhausted from playing with her cousins, and Marcus carried her inside and tucked her into bed while I stood in our kitchen, feeling the weight of the evening settle over me like a heavy blanket. Marcus found me there 20 minutes later, staring at nothing, lost in thought. You were amazing tonight, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. The way you handled Vanessa, calling her out without being cruel, it was perfect. I don't feel amazing. I feel tired and sad and frustrated that we even have to deal with this. I know. Me too. We stood there in silence for a long time, just holding each other, finding comfort in our partnership, our shared understanding that we were in this together, whatever this turned out to be. But I couldn't shake the image of Brian's face when Vanessa had made that comment about luxury gifts, the flash of shame and anger and something else, something that looked like desperation. And I thought about Vanessa's defensive posture during their argument, the way she'd wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold something together that was threatening to come apart. Something's wrong with them, I said quietly. Something beyond the usual tension. I know, Marcus replied. Brian's been weird lately. Distant. He won't return my calls half the time, and when he does, he sounds stressed. I think they're in trouble, Becca. Real trouble. What kind of trouble? Financial, probably. Maybe marital. Maybe both. Brian's been working crazy hours, picking up side gigs, and Vanessa's real estate business has been tanking. I heard her tell my mom she hasn't closed a deal in 3 months. 3 months. I pulled back to look at his face. Marcus, real estate agents work on commission. If she hasn't closed anything in 3 months, then they're living on Brian's salary alone, which isn't enough to support their lifestyle. Not even close. The pieces started falling into place. The increased hostility from Vanessa, the desperation in her comments, the need to prove her superiority even as her life was crumbling behind the facade. She wasn't attacking me because of my clothes. She was attacking me because I represented everything she was afraid of becoming. Someone who lived modestly, who made do with less, who found contentment without material excess. She's scared, I said softly. She's terrified that she's going to lose everything she's built her identity on. And she's lashing out at anyone who reminds her that there's another way to live. That doesn't excuse her behavior. No, but it explains it. And maybe if things get bad enough, she'll finally have to confront what she's been running from all these years. Marcus looked at me with concern. You're not thinking of helping them, are you? After everything she's done to you. I don't know what I'm thinking, I admitted. But if they're in real trouble, if they're about to lose everything, can we really just stand by and watch? Yes, Marcus said firmly. Yes, we can. Especially after the way she's treated you. You don't owe her anything, Becca. Not compassion, not help, not a damn thing. He was right, of course. I didn't owe Vanessa anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was coming. Something that would test not just their marriage or their finances, but all of us, the entire family dynamic, everything we thought we knew about each other and ourselves. I just didn't know yet how right I was. The weeks between Marcus's father's birthday and Christmas were strange, marked by an unusual silence from Brian and Vanessa. They didn't attend the family dinner Marcus's mother organized mid-December, claiming they were both sick with the flu. They didn't show up to Emma's winter concert at school, though they'd been invited. The text messages Marcus sent to his brother went unanswered for days, and when Brian finally responded, his replies were brief and cryptic. Something's definitely wrong, Marcus said one evening, staring at his phone. Brian just canceled our plans for Saturday. Said he's too busy with work projects. But it's December, Becca. His company always slows down this time of year. He usually has more free time now than any other season. I looked up from the book I was reading, seeing the worry etched across my husband's face. Marcus loved his brother despite everything, despite Vanessa's behavior and the growing distance between them. Blood meant something to Marcus. Family meant something, and watching that connection fray was painful for him. Maybe you should go over there, I suggested. Just show up. If he won't answer your calls or texts, maybe he needs to see you face to face. What if Vanessa's there? After what happened at Dad's party? Then you deal with Vanessa. But Brian's your brother, Marcus. If he's in trouble, he needs to know you're there for him, regardless of how his wife has treated me. Marcus crossed the room and kissed the top of my head. Have I mentioned lately that you're a better person than I am? You mention it occasionally, I teased. But you could stand to say it more often. He did go over there the next day, a Saturday morning when he knew Brian would likely be home. I stayed back with Emma, baking Christmas cookies and trying not to worry about what Marcus might find. But when he returned 3 hours later, his face told me everything before his words did. They're in serious trouble, he said, collapsing onto the couch. Brian finally broke down and told me everything. They're drowning, Becca. Absolutely drowning. They're 4 months behind on the mortgage, maxed out on credit cards, ignoring calls from collection agencies. Vanessa's business has completely tanked, not just slow but actually failing, and she's been hiding it from Brian, telling him she's closing deals when she's actually closing nothing. My heart sank despite everything, despite my anger at Vanessa, despite my resentment of their treatment of us. 4 months behind? Marcus, they're going to lose the house. They already know that. The bank sent them a foreclosure notice last week. They have 60 days to catch up or they start eviction proceedings. Where's Vanessa? Did she know you were coming over? She was there. She tried to keep up the act at first, pretending everything was fine, but Brian just exploded. He's been holding this in for months, and it all came pouring out. The debt, the lies, the constant pressure to maintain this image that's bankrupting them. It was brutal to watch, Becca. My brother was sobbing, and Vanessa just sat there looking like her whole world was ending. It is ending, I said quietly. The world she built, anyway. The question is what happens next. We sat in silence for a moment, processing this information, understanding that we were standing at a crossroads. We could let them fail, let them lose everything, watch from a distance as the consequences of their choices came crashing down. Or we could extend a hand, offer help, risk being pulled into their chaos. He asked me for money, Marcus said finally. $20,000 to catch up on the mortgage. He knows we don't have it, knows we'd have to drain Emma's college fund, but he asked anyway. He was desperate, Becca. I've never seen him like that. $20,000. It might as well have been 20 million. We didn't have that kind of money sitting around. Everything we had was earmarked, planned, carefully allocated. Emma's college fund had taken years to build, thousands of small sacrifices and careful choices. It represented her future, her opportunities, her chance at success. What did you tell him? I told him I needed to talk to you. That it's not my decision alone, that it affects our family, our daughter. He understood, or at least he said he did. Marcus looked at me with anguished eyes. What do we do, Becca? This was the moment, the test I'd somehow known was coming. The easy answer was no, protect our own. Let Brian and Vanessa face the natural consequences of their choices. They'd made their bed, quite literally, an expensive one they couldn't afford, and now they could lie in it. But the harder answer, the one that required more courage and more faith and more risk, was yes. Help them despite the cost, despite the uncertainty, despite everything Vanessa had done to me. I need to think about it, I said honestly. This isn't a decision we should make in the heat of the moment. It's too important, affects too many people. Marcus nodded, relieved not to have to decide immediately. Take whatever time you need. But Becca? Whatever you decide, I'll support. If you say no, I'll understand completely. After how Vanessa's treated you, no one would blame you for refusing. But that was the problem, wasn't it? No one would blame me. It would be the expected response, the justified response, the reasonable response. And maybe that's exactly why I needed to consider saying yes, because doing the unexpected, the unjustified, the unreasonable thing sometimes opens doors that staying reasonable keeps permanently closed. I spent the next 3 days wrestling with the decision. I made lists of pros and cons, calculated our finances, ran scenarios in my head. I prayed, meditated, talked to my best friend who told me I'd be crazy to help them. I even, in a moment of weakness, Googled, should I help someone who's been cruel to me? And found a dozen articles saying absolutely not, that self-care means establishing boundaries, that you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. But none of it felt right. Not the easy no that protected us, not the martyr yes that sacrificed us, not the conditional maybe that came with strings attached. What felt right, bizarrely, was somewhere in between, a response that acknowledged both the wrong that had been done to me and the potential for transformation that crisis creates. Then April came, earlier than expected, in the form of a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon that would change everything. I was grading papers at the kitchen table when my phone rang, Brian's number flashing across the screen. We rarely spoke directly, so my stomach immediately tightened with concern. Becca. His voice was hollow, defeated. Is Marcus there? He's at baseball practice with Emma. What's wrong? The pause that followed felt eternal, filled with unspoken desperation. I got laid off today. The entire IT department. Companies downsizing, moving operations overseas. They gave me 2 months severance and a handshake. That's it. 15 years gone. The room tilted slightly as the full implications hit me. They weren't just in trouble anymore, they were in catastrophe. No income, massive debt, a failing business, and now a foreclosure proceeding. This wasn't a temporary setback they could recover from. This was total collapse. Brian, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Are you okay? No. His voice cracked. I'm not okay. I don't know what to do, Becca. I don't know how to fix this. Vanessa's falling apart, we're going to lose everything. And I can't see a way out. In the background, I heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and accusatory, saying something I couldn't quite make out. Then Brian's muffled response, and the sound of a door slamming. Can Marcus call me when he gets home? I need to talk to him about some things. Of course. I'll have him call you right away. The line went dead, and I sat staring at my phone, feeling the weight of this news settle over me like snow, cold and heavy and transformative. The decision I'd been wrestling with for days had just become both more complicated and more clear. Because this wasn't just about whether we could afford to help them financially anymore. This was about whether we had the capacity and willingness to help them through a complete life collapse. Marcus called Brian that night, and I listened from the hallway as the conversation unfolded, hearing my husband's voice move from sympathetic to alarmed to shocked. When he finally emerged from our bedroom, his face was ashen. It's worse than we thought, he said, sitting heavily on our bed. The foreclosure notice came yesterday. They have 30 days, not 60. Vanessa hasn't paid the mortgage in 6 months, not 4. She's been using Brian's paychecks to cover other debts, gambling that she'd close a big deal and catch everything up at once. But the deal fell through, and now with Brian's income gone, they have nothing. Literally nothing. Do you think I should have helped them after everything they put me through? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my situation. I sat beside him, taking his hand. What do they want from us? Everything. Money, advice, a place to stay if the eviction happens. Brian's desperate, and Vanessa, he says she's barely functioning. Just sitting in their bedroom, staring at the wall, not answering her phone or responding to clients. She's completely shut down. Part of me, the wounded part that remembered every cruel comment and deliberate humiliation, felt a dark satisfaction at this news. Vanessa, who'd mocked my modest life, was now facing the prospect of having nothing at all. The universe had delivered poetic justice without me having to lift a finger. But another part of me, the part that still believed in grace and second chances and the possibility of transformation, felt only sadness. Because this kind of fall didn't just hurt Vanessa. It hurt Brian, who loved her despite her flaws, and it hurt Marcus, who was watching his brother suffer. And it would hurt Marcus's parents, who would grieve seeing their son lose everything. We can't give them $20,000, I said firmly. That's off the table. We can't risk Emma's future like that. I know. I already told Brian that. But maybe we can help in other ways. Practical ways that don't bankrupt us but still offer support. Marcus looked at me with a mixture of hope and caution. Like what? Like teaching them how to budget, how to negotiate with creditors, how to prioritize debts. Like helping them sell things they don't need, downsize, find affordable housing. Like showing them how to live the way we've lived all these years, within their means, without the constant pressure of maintaining an image. I paused, gathering courage for what I was about to propose. Like offering Vanessa the same thing she's mocked me for having, practical knowledge about how to survive on less. You want to help Vanessa? After everything. I want to help your brother. And helping Vanessa is part of that. Besides, Marcus, this is her rock bottom. This is the moment when people either break completely or finally start building something real. Maybe, just maybe, losing everything is exactly what she needs to find out who she actually is underneath all that designer armor. He stared at me for a long moment. You're either the most forgiving person I've ever met, or the most naive. Maybe both. Or maybe I just understand that hurt people, and if we can help Vanessa heal, she'll stop hurting everyone around her. It's not about her deserving it, Marcus. It's about breaking a cycle, about choosing compassion even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. 2 weeks later, Vanessa called me directly. I was standing in the grocery store, comparing prices on pasta sauce, living the life she'd once mocked, when her name appeared on my screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me, curiosity, compassion, maybe just morbid fascination. Rebecca. Not Becca, I noticed. Rebecca. Formal, careful, stripped of her usual condescension. I need to talk to you. Can I come over? Every instinct screamed no. This woman had spent years making me feel small. And now she wanted something from me, wanted access to my home, my time, my help. The temptation to say I was busy, to make her wait, to taste even a moment of the power she'd wielded over me for so long was almost overwhelming. But I heard myself say, when? Now? I'm actually outside your house. I saw your car was gone, so I figured I'd wait, but if you're close. The audacity of it, showing up uninvited, assuming I'd drop everything, send me reeling. But underneath the audacity, I heard something I'd never heard in Vanessa's voice before. Genuine fear. I'm 15 minutes away. I abandoned my shopping cart mid-aisle, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation, and something else I couldn't quite name. This woman who'd spent years trying to diminish me wanted something from me. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. When I pulled into the driveway, Vanessa was sitting on my porch steps, her designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but nothing could hide her posture, the defeated slump of her shoulders, the way she held herself like she was trying not to shatter into pieces. She stood as I approached, and even from a distance I could see she'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her clothes still expensive but now looking like they'd been slept in, wrinkled and stained. "Thank you for coming home," she said, her voice so small I barely recognized it. I unlocked the door and gestured for her to follow me inside. We stood in my modest kitchen with its outdated countertops and refrigerator covered in Emma's artwork, and for the first time in 7 years, Vanessa looked at me without that superior gleam in her eyes. "I need your help," she said, and the words seemed to physically hurt her, like each syllable was a knife she had to swallow. "Brian told me not to come here, told me we'd figure something else out, but there is nothing else, Rebecca. We're drowning. The house, the cars, everything, it's all falling apart, and I don't know what to do." I leaned against the counter, giving her space, watching her carefully. This was the moment I'd fantasized about in my darkest hours of humiliation. Vanessa, stripped of her armor, vulnerable and desperate, forced to acknowledge that all her mockery had been hollow, that the life she'd flaunted had been nothing more than an expensive illusion built on a foundation of sand. "What specifically do you need from me?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Money. Advice. I don't know." She laughed, a bitter sound nothing like her usual sharp laugh. "You're probably enjoying this. Watching me beg. After everything I've said to you, everything I've done, you have every right to tell me to get the hell out and never come back." She wasn't wrong. I did have that right. And part of me wanted to exercise it, wanted to taste the satisfaction of turning her away, of letting her know how it felt to be rejected, diminished, dismissed. But as I watched her shoulders shake with the effort of holding herself together, I felt something unexpected wash over me. Not pity exactly, and certainly not satisfaction, but a recognition of our shared humanity. She was a woman who'd built her entire identity on material success, and now that foundation was crumbling, and she had no idea who she was without it. In a strange way, I understood that terror, the fear of losing the thing you thought defined you, even if what I valued and what she valued were completely different. "Sit down," I said, pulling out a kitchen chair. "I'll make coffee and you can tell me everything. The real everything. Not the version you've been performing for everyone else." She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks, her expensive facade completely shattered, and nodded. "Okay." Over the next 2 hours, Vanessa dismantled the facade she'd maintained for years. Each revelation was like pulling a thread from an elaborate tapestry, watching the whole thing unravel into a pile of expensive yarn that added up to nothing of substance. The luxury vacations had been charged to credit cards they couldn't afford, and they'd borrowed from one card to pay the minimum on another. The Tesla wasn't just leased. They were 3 payments behind and facing repossession. Her real estate career hadn't just slowed. It had tanked spectacularly when she alienated too many clients with her aggressive sales tactics and condescending attitude. Word had spread in the tight-knit real estate community, and now other agents wouldn't refer clients to her. Brokers wouldn't return her calls. "I thought if I looked successful, if I acted successful, it would become real," she said, staring into her coffee mug like it might hold answers. "Fake it until you make it, right? That's what all the success gurus say. Project confidence, dress the part, act like you've already made it." But it was all smoke and mirrors. And I was so afraid people would see through it, would see that I was a fraud, that I attacked first. "Especially you." "Why especially me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She took a shaky breath. "Because you weren't pretending. You were genuinely happy with what you had, content in a way I'd never been in my entire life, and it made me furious. How dare you be satisfied with so little when I had so much and still felt empty? How dare you walk around in your thrift store clothes and your modest house and your old car looking more at peace than I'd ever felt in my designer dresses?" She wiped her eyes with a napkin. "God, I sound like a villain in a bad movie." "You sound like someone who got lost," I said carefully. "Someone who confused wealth with worth." She nodded slowly, and I saw something break behind her eyes, some final piece of the mask falling away. "My mother was like this," she said suddenly. "Always worried about what the neighbors thought. Always trying to keep up with people who had more than us. She worked 2 jobs to send me to the nice school, bought me the right clothes, made sure I looked the part. And she told me every single day that appearance mattered, that people judged you by what you had, that if you wanted to be someone, you had to look like someone. I internalized that so completely that I never questioned it, never thought maybe there was another way to be. This was more than I'd expected. This glimpse into the origins of Vanessa's obsession with status. And it reframed everything, not excusing her behavior, but explaining it. She'd been programmed from childhood to believe that her value was external, and she'd spent her entire adult life trying to prove that programming right, even as it bankrupted her financially and emotionally. "What does your mother think of all this?" I asked gently. "She doesn't know. She died 3 years ago, and honestly, I'm glad she's not here to see this. She would be so ashamed of me, not for losing the house or the car, but for failing to maintain the image, for letting people see behind the curtain." "That's heartbreaking, Vanessa." "What is?" "That you think your mother would be ashamed of you for being human, for having struggles, for not being perfect. That's a terrible burden to carry." She looked at me with something like wonder. "You really don't get it, do you? You really don't understand what it's like to measure your worth by what you own, to feel like a failure if you can't afford the right brands or the right lifestyle." "You're right, I don't. But I understand what it's like to feel like a failure for other reasons. To worry that I'm not doing enough, not being enough, not providing enough for my family. Everyone has their version of not measuring up, Vanessa. The question is whether you let that fear drive you, or whether you find a different measuring stick." She was quiet for a long time, absorbing this. Then, "Will you help us?" "Not with money. I know you don't have that to spare, and honestly, I don't think money is the answer anymore. Money is what got us into this mess, the constant need for more of it, the willingness to go into debt for it. But will you teach me? How to budget, how to shop smart, how to live without feeling like I'm dying inside." This was it, the moment of choice. I could say no, protect my peace, let her figure it out on her own. Or I could say yes, risk being dragged into their chaos, expose myself to more potential hurt. Every rational part of me screamed to refuse, to set boundaries, to prioritize my own well-being. But the part of me that had been shaped by years of choosing compassion over comfort couldn't turn her away. Not when she was finally asking the right questions, finally willing to learn, finally admitting she needed help. "I'll help you," I said, watching relief flood her features. "But you need to understand something. This isn't going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. You're going to have to change not just how you spend, but how you think, how you value things, how you measure success. You're going to have to face some painful truths about yourself and your choices. And you're going to have to do the work, actual work, not just listen to advice and then ignore it. Are you ready for that?" "I don't think I have a choice," she admitted. "You always have a choice," I countered. "You can declare bankruptcy, start over with nothing, keep chasing the same life you had before. Or you can choose differently this time. Choose sustainability over status. Choose substance over style. Choose real over impressive. But it has to be your choice, Vanessa. I can show you how, but I can't make you change." She met my eyes, and I saw determination there mixed with the fear. "Then I choose differently. Teach me." Over the next several months, Vanessa became an unexpected fixture in my life. She'd show up at my house in the mornings, usually around 9 after she'd spent the early hours putting out whatever fires had sprung up in her crumbling life. She'd bring coffee, good coffee from her expensive machine that she hadn't sold yet, and we'd sit at my kitchen table and go through her finances line by line. It was brutal. She had 17 credit cards, all maxed out. Her real estate business had expenses she'd been hiding from Brian. A leased office space she never used, software subscriptions she never canceled, marketing materials she never distributed. They had 3 car payments, not just the Tesla but also Brian's truck and a third vehicle they kept just in case. They had a storage unit filled with expensive furniture from Vanessa's office and designer clothes she bought on sale, as an investment. "None of this is necessary," I explained as gently as I could. "The office, the subscriptions, the extra cars, the storage unit, it's all just money bleeding out month after month. We need to stop the bleeding first, then figure out how to heal the wounds." We made a plan. Cancel every subscription they weren't actively using. Sell the extra vehicles, use that money to catch up on the Tesla or turn it in and get something affordable. Empty the storage unit, sell what they could, donate the rest. Call every credit card company. Explain the situation. Negotiate lower interest rates or payment plans. List the house at a price that would actually sell, not the inflated amount Vanessa insisted it was worth. "But that's giving up," she protested when I suggested pricing the house lower. "That's admitting defeat." "No," I corrected firmly. "That's accepting reality. The house is worth what someone will pay for it, not what you wish they'd pay. And right now you need it to sell quickly before the foreclosure goes through. Your choices are sell it for less than you want and walk away with something, or hold out for your dream price and lose it to the bank for nothing." She cried a lot during those early weeks. Cried over the cars they had to sell, the furniture that went for a fraction of what she'd paid, the designer clothes that barely fetched anything at consignment shops because they were out of style or too worn. Each loss felt like a piece of her identity being stripped away, and in a sense it was. She was grieving not just for the material things, but for the version of herself she'd built around those things. But slowly, grudgingly, she started to change. I taught her how to meal plan and grocery shop with coupons, how to find quality clothing at thrift stores and consignment shops, how to identify what was necessary versus what was just wanted. We spent hours poring over her budget, finding places to cut, negotiating with creditors, building a plan to climb out of debt that didn't involve winning the lottery or landing $1 million real estate deal. Marcus watched this transformation with amazement, and I'll admit, so did I. There were days when I couldn't believe this was the same woman who'd mocked my cardigan, who'd made jokes about homeless shelters, who'd treated me like I was less than human for living modestly. She was learning humility the hard way, through necessity and desperation, but she was learning. "I never thought I'd see the day when Vanessa would willingly set foot in a Goodwill," Marcus said one evening after she'd left, clutching a bag of gently used clothes we'd found for a total of $32. "Desperation is a powerful teacher," I replied, but it was more than desperation. Vanessa was genuinely changing, shedding the armor of superiority that had isolated her for so long. She'd started volunteering at the homeless shelter, the very one she joked about, serving meals and sorting donations. She'd gotten a part-time job at a local boutique, swallowing her pride to work retail for $12 an hour. She'd traded the designer handbags for practical totes, and the salon highlights for drugstore box color that I taught her to apply herself. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments when she'd slip back into old patterns, making comments about my choices before catching herself, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she'd say. "Old habits. I'm working on it." And I could see she really was working on it, consciously trying to retrain her brain to measure value differently. There were days when the reality of her new life would hit her hard, and she'd break down in my kitchen, mourning the loss of her previous identity. "Who am I if I'm not successful?" she asked once, mascara running down her face. "If I'm not the woman with the designer clothes and the nice house and the impressive car, who am I?" "You're Vanessa," I said simply. "Just Vanessa. And that's enough. In fact, it's more than enough. It's everything. Because the real you, stripped of all the expensive packaging, is what people actually want to know and connect with. The costume was keeping people at a distance. Now they can finally see you." She looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language, but I could see the words landing, taking root somewhere deep. The idea that she could be valuable just as herself, without any external validation or material proof, was revolutionary to her. It was the lesson I'd learned years ago, the one that had given me peace and contentment even without wealth. And watching her slowly, painfully learn it too was like watching someone being reborn. Emma noticed the changes in Vanessa and asked me about it one night while I tucked her into bed. "Why is Aunt Vanessa coming over so much, Mom? Is she your friend now?" "She's learning some things," I explained carefully. "And yes, I think she's becoming my friend. People can change, sweetheart, if they really want to and if they're willing to do the hard work." "Is she nice now?" I thought about that question. "She's trying to be. She's learning that being kind is more important than looking impressive. That's a hard lesson for some people." Was she mean because she was sad? The insight from my 11-year-old daughter took my breath away. "Yes, baby. I think she was very sad and very scared. And sometimes people act mean when they feel that way. It doesn't make it okay, but it helps explain it." "Are you going to forgive her?" Another profound question. "I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It's a choice you make over and over, especially when someone is really trying to change." The real test came 6 months after Brian lost his job. Their house finally sold. For less than they'd hoped, but enough to settle the mortgage and a few other debts. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, the kind of place Vanessa would have sneered at a year ago. Marcus and I helped them move, along with Marcus's parents, who were quietly relieved to see the couple downsizing to something actually sustainable. I remember standing in the empty living room of their former showplace, the space that had once been filled with expensive furniture and status symbols, all of it now sold or donated or repossessed. The walls still bore the outlines of where pictures had hung, the floors showed the indentations from heavy furniture, and the whole house echoed with emptiness. It was like standing in the corpse of a dream, and I waited for Vanessa to break down, to regret everything, to resent the life she'd been forced into. Instead, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not turning me away when I deserved it. For seeing past the awful person I was and helping me become someone better. For teaching me that I don't need all this," she gestured around the empty room, "to be worthy. For showing me what real strength looks like." I felt my own eyes fill with tears. "You did the work, Vanessa. I just pointed the way. You're the one who had the courage to actually change." We stood there for a moment in silence, 2 women in an empty house, and I thought about how strange life is, how the things we think will destroy us sometimes save us, how loss can lead to discovery, how rock bottom can be the foundation for building something real. Brian found a job 3 weeks after they moved into the apartment. It wasn't in IT, which surprised everyone. He took a position teaching technology classes at the community college, making less than his previous salary but with good benefits and, more importantly, with a sense of purpose he'd been missing. He came home energized instead of drained, excited about his students instead of stressed about deadlines. The career change that had seemed like a devastating setback turned out to be an unexpected gift. Vanessa started taking classes at the same college, pursuing a degree in social work of all things. She wanted to help people, she told me, wanted to use her people skills in a way that actually mattered instead of manipulating clients into buying houses they couldn't afford. She volunteered more at the shelter, got to know the families there, began to see poverty and struggle not as something to fear or mock, but as something to address and help solve. The family gatherings changed after that. The competitive edge was gone, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. Vanessa arrived in jeans and clearance rack sweaters, often wearing items I'd helped her find at thrift stores. She brought potluck dishes instead of expensive wine, and her conversations focused on her students at the boutique, or the families she was meeting at the shelter instead of vacation destinations and car upgrades. At Thanksgiving that year, exactly 1 year after the cardigan incident, Vanessa asked if she could say something before we ate. The table went quiet, everyone looking at her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, old patterns dying hard. "I want to say something," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "A year ago, I was a terrible person. I was cruel and shallow and I hurt people who didn't deserve it, especially Rebecca." She turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears. "You could have let me drown when I came to you for help. God knows I would have if the situation were reversed, at least back then, probably still now if I'm being honest. But you didn't. You taught me that real wealth isn't in your closet or your garage or your bank account. It's in your character, in how you treat people, in the choices you make every day to be better than you were yesterday. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for saving my life by teaching me how to actually live it." The table erupted in tears and hugs, Marcus's mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, his father clearing his throat repeatedly, Emma coming around the table to hug both me and Vanessa. Brian pulled Vanessa close, and I saw pride on his face for the woman she'd become, not the image she'd once projected. Later that night, as Marcus and I lay in bed, he rolled over to face me. "You did an incredible thing," he said softly. "Not just helping them financially, but helping Vanessa find herself. That took a bigger heart than I think I would have had. I didn't do it for her at first," I admitted. "I did it because it was the right thing to do, because showing compassion even when it's not deserved is what defines us. But somewhere along the way, I started to care about her, to want her to succeed, to hope she'd find the same contentment I'd found. And did she?" I thought about Vanessa's face in that empty house, the gratitude in her eyes, the lightness in her step as she carried boxes into her modest apartment, the genuine smile she'd worn at dinner tonight. I think she did. I think she finally realized that the life she was chasing was killing her, and the life she was mocking was actually the one worth living. "What do you think would have happened if Brian hadn't lost his job?" Marcus asked. "Honestly, I think they would have eventually imploded anyway. The debt, the lifestyle, the constant pressure to maintain appearances, it wasn't sustainable. Brian's layoff was awful, but in a strange way, it was also a gift. It forced them to confront their reality before they were completely destroyed by it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing in disguise." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what's funny? I used to feel bad that I couldn't give you the life Vanessa had. The big house, the new cars, the vacations. But watching what happened to them, seeing how miserable that life actually made her, I realize I've been giving you something better all along." "And what's that?" I asked, though I already knew. "Peace. Stability. A life we can actually afford and enjoy instead of one that requires us to pretend and perform and constantly chase more." He pulled me closer. "Thank you for never making me feel bad about what I couldn't provide. For building a beautiful life with what we had instead of resenting what we didn't. Thank you for being you, Rebecca. For being real and genuine and content. You taught me more than you taught Vanessa, honestly. You taught me every single day that enough is enough, that we already have everything we need." I felt tears slide down my cheeks in the darkness. "Thank you for choosing a life with me. For valuing the same things I do. For raising our daughter to understand that worth isn't measured in price tags. We may not have much compared to some people, but what we have is real." The following months brought more changes, all of them positive. Vanessa started a blog about her journey from excess to sufficiency, calling it From Designer to Design for Purpose. She shared her story with brutal honesty, the debt, the pretense, the crushing pressure of maintaining an image, the relief of finally letting it all go. The blog gained a surprising following, People who resonated with her message of finding freedom through simplicity, of reclaiming life from the tyranny of consumption. She used the platform to promote thrift stores and budget-friendly living, partnering with local charities and becoming an advocate for the very things she'd once mocked. She wrote about the joy of finding a perfect sweater for $3, the satisfaction of creating a meal for under $10 that fed her family, the peace that came from looking at her bank account without anxiety. Who knew that not shopping could be so freeing? She wrote in one post that went viral. For years, I measured my worth by what I owned. Now I measure it by what I don't need to own. And I've never felt richer. She also became one of my closest friends, which I never would have predicted in a million years. We'd meet for coffee at cheap diners instead of expensive cafes, swap clothes instead of buying new ones, trade books from the library instead of purchasing bestsellers from Amazon. We volunteered together at the shelter, taught budgeting classes together at the community center, supported each other through the daily struggles of raising families and managing households on limited budgets. The relationship we built was based on mutual respect and shared values, and it was stronger than any superficial connection we might have maintained through polite family obligations. We'd been through fire together, Vanessa through the destruction of her old life, and me through the challenge of helping without enabling, and we'd both emerged changed, better, more authentic. Brian and Marcus's relationship deepened too. Free from the competitive dynamic that Vanessa's spending had created, the brothers reconnected over fishing trips and backyard barbecues, simple pleasures that didn't require wealth, just time and attention. They talked about things that mattered, their fears and hopes and struggles, instead of just comparing possessions or careers. Brian admitted he'd been jealous of Marcus for years, jealous of the easy contentment Marcus had with so much less, and Marcus admitted he'd been intimidated by Brian's apparent success. Turns out we were both idiots, Brian said one evening as we all sat around our backyard fire pit, roasting marshmallows. You had what I was pretending to have, peace and a real partnership and a life that actually worked. I was killing myself trying to keep up with the fantasy. And I was doubting myself because I thought maybe you'd figured something out that I was missing, Marcus replied. Turns out the thing I was missing was debt and stress and a wife who couldn't stop spending. He looked at Vanessa with affection. No offense, V. None taken, she laughed. Past me was a nightmare. Present me is working on being better. Emma learned powerful lessons through watching all of this unfold. She saw that people could change, that mistakes didn't define you forever, that compassion could transform not just the recipient but the giver. She also internalized the importance of living within your means, of finding joy in simple things, of measuring success by your character instead of your possessions. One night, she came to me with her piggy bank, the one she'd been filling with birthday money and allowance for years. Mom, I want to give this to Aunt Vanessa and Uncle Brian, to help them. I sat down with her, touched by her generosity but wanting to make sure she understood. That's very kind, sweetheart. But they're okay now. They have enough for what they need. Why do you want to give them your savings? Because you helped them when they didn't deserve it. And I want to be like you. I want to help people even when it's hard. I pulled her into a hug. This incredible child who'd been watching and learning and absorbing values that would serve her far better than any amount of money ever could. You are like me, baby. You're better than me. But let's save your money for your future. Okay? The best way you can help people is to grow up to be someone who helps them. Someone who serves and cares and shows compassion. And that doesn't require giving away your savings. It just requires giving away your heart. 2 years after that fateful phone call from Brian, Vanessa invited me to speak at a women's conference she was organizing at the community college. The topic was financial wellness and self-worth, and she wanted me to share my perspective on building a meaningful life without debt or pretense. I know public speaking isn't your thing, she said when she asked. But Rebecca, you have something to say that people need to hear. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Please. I was terrified, but I agreed. Because she was right. I did have something to say. And maybe, just maybe, sharing our story could help someone else who was struggling with the same pressures Vanessa had faced, the pressure to keep up, to look successful, to measure worth by material standards. I stood on that stage, looking out at a room full of about 200 women, many of them wearing the kind of strained smiles I recognized, the ones that covered stress and fear and crushing pressure. And I told them our story, about how the woman who'd once mocked my thrift store clothes had become my best friend by learning to shop beside me in those very stores. The world tells us that our value is in what we own, I said to that audience, my voice steady despite my nerves. But I'm here to tell you that your value is in who you are when everything else is stripped away. It's in your integrity, your kindness, your willingness to help others even when they haven't earned it, even when they've actively hurt you. It's in the choices you make every single day to live authentically instead of aspirationally, to be real instead of impressive, to find contentment in what you have instead of constantly chasing more. The applause was deafening, and I saw Vanessa in the front row, tears streaming down her face, clapping harder than anyone else. After the presentation, women lined up to share their own stories, to ask for advice, to thank me for giving them permission to step off the hamster wheel of consumption. They told me about their debt, their stress, their fears that they'd never measure up. And I listened to each one, offered what wisdom I could, and reminded them that they already measured up, that they always had, that the measuring stick they'd been using was broken. One woman, probably in her 50s with perfectly styled hair and designer shoes, waited until everyone else had left. She approached me hesitantly like she wasn't sure she should be there. "I'm Susan," she said. "I'm Vanessa's mother-in-law, Brian's mom." I recognized her, of course, from family gatherings. "It's nice to talk with you properly. I need to apologize to you," she said, and I saw tears in her eyes. "For not stopping Vanessa. For all those years I knew she was treating you badly, making those comments, hurting you. And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause problems, didn't want to interfere. But my silence enabled her behavior. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm so sorry." I reached out and took her hand. "You don't need to apologize. You were trying to keep peace, trying to hold your family together. I understand that. But you deserved better. You deserved someone to stand up for you. And instead you ended up being the one who saved my son's family. The grace you showed, the compassion, it's more than I would have been capable of. Thank you." "I didn't do it for thanks," I said honestly. "I did it because it was right. Because broken people can be healed, and broken relationships can be mended, and broken lives can be rebuilt. All it takes is someone willing to offer a hand instead of pointing a finger." She hugged me then, this woman I'd spent years being polite to at holidays, and in that hug was years of unspoken gratitude and relief and respect. That evening, Vanessa and I sat on my back porch, watching the sunset and sipping cheap wine from the grocery store, perfectly content in our simple moment. It had become our routine, these evening talks where we'd process the day, share our struggles, celebrate our victories. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked her. "The old life, the nice things, the feeling of walking into a store and buying whatever you wanted?" She was quiet for a long time, considering. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments when I see something beautiful and feel that old pull, that desire to own it, to have it define me. But then I remember how empty I was when I had all those things, how anxious and insecure and desperate. I remember lying awake at night worried about credit card bills and keeping up appearances and what people thought of me. And I look at my life now, smaller and simpler, but so much richer in the ways that matter, and I can't imagine going back. I don't want to go back. Because I know the truth now, that stuff can never fill the holes inside us. Only people and purpose and living according to your values can do that." "I'm proud of you," I said, and I meant it. "It takes real courage to change, to admit you were wrong, to build something new from the ruins of what you thought you wanted." "I'm proud of you too," she replied. "You could have destroyed me when I came to you for help. You had every reason to turn me away or help me with conditions that humiliated me. But you didn't. You just showed me a better way with patience and grace, and you never made me feel stupid for not knowing what you'd learned over years of practice. That's real strength, Rebecca. That's real class. That's what I aspire to now." We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to dark blue, two women from completely different paths who'd found common ground in the most unlikely of circumstances. And I realized that this friendship built on honesty and transformation, this peace that came from living authentically, this contentment that had nothing to do with money or status, this was the real treasure all along. Years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and changes but also stability and growth. Emma grew into a teenager who understood the value of $1 and the importance of character over appearance. She volunteered regularly, worked part-time jobs and saved her money, chose friends based on their kindness rather than their social status. She was everything I'd hoped she'd be, grounded and compassionate and wise beyond her years. Marcus continued teaching, shaping young minds and coming home satisfied with work that mattered. He started a financial literacy program at his school, teaching teenagers about budgeting and saving, and avoiding the debt traps that had almost destroyed his brother's family. Vanessa guest lectured for his classes sometimes, sharing her story as a cautionary tale, and the students responded to her honesty, her willingness to admit her mistakes. Brian thrived in his new career, discovering talents he never knew he had. He was good with students, patient and knowledgeable, and able to break down complex concepts into understandable pieces. He got promoted to department head after 3 years, started developing new curriculum, found a professional identity that had nothing to do with his paycheck and everything to do with his impact. And Vanessa became a voice for financial wellness and authentic living, using her story to help others avoid the mistakes she'd made. Her blog led to a book deal, and she wrote honestly about her journey from debt and pretense to freedom and authenticity. The book sold well, not because it promised easy answers or get-rich-quick schemes, but because it told the truth about the cost of keeping up appearances and the relief of finally letting go. But the biggest change was in how our family gatherings felt. The competition was gone, replaced by genuine connection. The judgment was gone, replaced by acceptance. The pretense was gone, replaced by realness. We laughed more, talked more honestly, supported each other through actual struggles instead of comparing manufactured successes. And on the anniversary of that Thanksgiving, when Vanessa had mocked my cardigan, we started a new tradition. Each person would bring something they'd found at a thrift store, garage sale, or discount store and share the story of why they chose it and what it meant to them. It became a celebration of creativity and resourcefulness, a reminder that value isn't determined by price but by meaning and purpose. Vanessa brought a vintage scarf that had cost her $3 and styled it 6 different ways, teaching everyone that fashion was about creativity, not consumption. Brian brought a used book on philosophy that had changed his perspective on success. Marcus found an old baseball glove that reminded him of his childhood and the simple joy of throwing a ball in the backyard. Emma contributed a handmade journal she'd found at a craft fair, filled with her thoughts and dreams, priceless despite its modest cost. Marcus's parents brought a set of antique dishes they'd found at an estate sale, talking about the history each piece held, the meals it had served, the family gatherings it had witnessed. And me? I wore that same cardigan Vanessa had once mocked, but this time when she saw it, she smiled with genuine warmth and said, "You know what? That sweater looks beautiful on you. It always did. I was just too blind and broken to see it. Thank you for wearing it today, for not letting my cruelty rob you of something you loved." "And I see you now," I replied, hugging her close. "The real you, not the costume. And she's pretty amazing. She's brave and honest and growing every day." Looking back on everything that happened, I often wonder what would have occurred if Brian hadn't lost his job, if Vanessa had never been forced to confront her choices, if she'd continued down that path of excess and judgment. Would we have grown apart completely, family in name only? Would she have eventually destroyed herself financially and emotionally? Would I have carried the wounds of her mockery forever, letting bitterness take root in my heart and poison my contentment? But those aren't the questions that matter, because none of those things happened. Instead, crisis became opportunity, humiliation became transformation, and an enemy became a friend. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was real, and it was worth every uncomfortable conversation, every difficult lesson, every moment of choosing compassion over revenge. I learned that people are capable of profound change when they're given space and grace to do so. I learned that my values, the ones Vanessa had mocked, weren't just personally fulfilling but powerful enough to transform someone else's life. I learned that the high road isn't just the moral choice. It's often the most rewarding one, leading to places you never expected to go, relationships you never thought possible, growth you never imagined necessary. And Vanessa learned that the life she'd been chasing was a mirage, that the woman she'd been mocking had actually figured out the secret to contentment, and that it's never too late to choose differently, to become better, to align your life with your values instead of society's expectations. She learned that rock bottom isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning, the foundation upon which you build something real and lasting. So when people ask me if I regret helping Vanessa, if I wish I'd made her suffer the way she made me suffer, my answer is always the same. How could I regret being part of someone's transformation? How could I wish pain on another human being when I could choose to be part of their healing instead? That's not who I am, and more importantly, that's not who I want to be. That's not the legacy I want to leave for my daughter, or the example I want to set for anyone watching my life. My choice to help Vanessa wasn't about being a martyr or a saint. It was about recognizing our shared humanity, about understanding that hurt people, and healed people heal people. It was about choosing the kind of world I want to live in, one where compassion trumps cruelty, where growth is celebrated, where second chances aren't just given to the deserving, but to anyone willing to do the hard work of change. And in helping her, I healed something in myself too. The wounds her words had created, the insecurity she'd fed, the doubt she'd planted, all of it dissolved in the light of our new relationship. I stopped hearing her voice in my head when I got dressed in the morning, stopped wondering if people were judging my choices, stopped feeling like I had to defend my life to anyone. Because I'd proven, not just to Vanessa but to myself, that the life I'd chosen was not just valid but valuable, not just acceptable but admirable, not just enough but more than enough. That's the thing about living authentically. Eventually, the right people recognize its worth, and the wrong people either transform or fall away. Vanessa transformed, and in doing so she became the right person, the friend I never knew I needed, the mirror that reflected back the truth I'd always known but sometimes doubted when the world suggested otherwise. Today, when I look at my modest home, my second-hand clothes, my now 15-year-old car, I don't see lack. I see freedom. Freedom from debt, from pretense, from the exhausting performance of manufactured success. I see a life built on solid ground, sustainable and sincere, authentic and aligned with my deepest values. And I see the beautiful irony that the woman who once tried to make me feel small for living this way now celebrates it, embodies it, and teaches others to embrace it. So if you've ever been made to feel less than because you live within your means, because you choose substance over style, because you find joy in simple things, please know this: you're not missing out, you're opting out. You're choosing a different game. One where the prizes are peace of mind, financial stability, authentic relationships, and the freedom to be yourself without apology. And those prizes are worth infinitely more than anything you could buy at a department store or luxury boutique. And if you've ever been the person doing the judging, measuring others by superficial standards, deriving worth from material possessions, please know this too: it's not too late to change. It wasn't too late for Vanessa, and it's not too late for you. The door to a better way is always open, waiting for you to walk through it with humility and willingness to learn. And on the other side of that door is a life that's lighter, freer, more connected, more meaningful than anything you've experienced before. Did I make the right choice in helping Vanessa? I believe with my whole heart that I did. Not because she deserved it, at least not at first, but because compassion isn't something we ration out to the deserving. It's something we offer freely, knowing that in giving it away, we actually receive more than we give. We receive the satisfaction of being part of someone's healing, the joy of watching transformation unfold, the peace that comes from choosing love over bitterness, the growth that comes from extending ourselves beyond our comfort zones. So yes, my sister-in-law laughed at my old clothes, made cruel jokes, tried to diminish me at every turn. But her husband's job loss became the catalyst for something beautiful. It stripped away everything false and left only what was real. And in that reality we found friendship, growth, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that true wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with how you live, how you love, how you treat others, and what you choose to value. And in the end, that's all any of us really has: our choices. We can choose bitterness or forgiveness, revenge or compassion, judgment or grace. We can choose to build walls or bridges, to see enemies or potential friends, to nurse wounds or offer healing. I chose healing, chose compassion, chose grace. And while it wasn't the easy choice, it was the right one. Not just for Vanessa or Brian or Marcus or even Emma, but for me, for my own soul, for the person I wanted to be when I looked in the mirror each morning. If you like this story, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to get more stories from me. Remember, it's never too late to choose authenticity over appearances, and compassion will always take you further than cruelty ever could. The clothes you wear don't define you. The character you build does. And that's something no one can ever take away or mock or diminish. With love and respect, Auntie Helen Stories.